Okay, Essi, thank you. That was great. Some wonderful detail there about the last champagne. Should we move on to the next one you picked?
Yes, so the third one I chose, then this is a grower producer from the Côte d'Ivoire, so from the very south of Champagne, which is really much up and coming at the moment. So, for a really long time already, a lot of the grapes from there have ended up in the cuvées of the big champagne houses. But now there's a real boom for establishing new grower domains. And actually, this domain La Borderie is a great example of that. It's a family who owns approximately 11 hectares of vineyards, but they actually had 100 years gap in pressing the grapes for themselves. So they were selling the grapes for 100 years until now. Simon Normand and his sister Marie decided to build a winery and become winemakers again. So only a small part of the grapes today go for this brand. So obviously it's growing sort of naturally, little by little. But I've been really like the wines are really polished, super well made. But I also like that there is this Burgundian character to the ideology, because Côte d'Ivoire is actually closer to Chablis and Burgundy than it is of Champagne, and many of its growers actually study in Burgundy and not in Champagne, and this is the case with Simon Normand as well. So there's this naturally this more idea of making single vineyard champagnes and monovarietal champagnes in the sort of Burgundy fashion. So already since the beginning, La Borderie decided to do several single vineyard cuvées. And this is a personal favorite of mine. Well, it has a very funny name. It says de Quoi Mêles, which is a very difficult name, which apparently means something like mind your own business. What is it to you? And the story goes that it's actually the actual name of the plot in all the official registry. It's called the Quoi Mêles with a question mark. It's the only plot name which has a question mark on it in France. So the idea was that someone in the older days was planting Pinot Noir in the Aube on a north-facing slope, and apparently the neighbors came there to ridicule him, that what the hell is this idiot doing, that Pinot Noir will never do well on that north-facing slope. And hence it got the name the Quoi Mêles, what is it to you? And that's what I really like about this wine, that it is a very different, Simon calls it the antithesis of a Blanc de Noir, because it's not this sort of rich and sumptuous, often heavy and vinous Blanc de Noir, not at all. It's actually a very light and linear and driven and elegant Blanc de Noir. So already in the color, you don't see this sort of peachy reflection, what you often do have in especially the riper Blanc de Noirs from Pinot Noir. On the nose, it's quite youthful. It has both this sort of apricot-y, peachy fruit, a lot of apple, but also some red fruit on it. But clearly on the nose, to me, it doesn't scream Pinot Noir. I mean, you really would have to sense careful. I would probably say that it's a blend. It's so untypical. Lovely little toastiness emerging. This is in 2019. It's a non-vintage, but it comes 100% from 2019, which is a really beautiful, very cool harvest, very balanced harvest in Champagne. One of the nicest in the recent years.
I was thinking that as I was going through it, as you say, and taking in the aromas and then trying the champagne, it's much more along the I'd say slightly more cooked fruit, warmer fruit. It's not as crisp as the other champagnes. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to have, but it's really interesting to notice how different this champagne is compared to the other ones.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, many things explaining that. Of course, we are in a completely different climate. We are in a different soil in the Orb. But also, this is a very, unique expression. It doesn't have that sort of blended perfection of especially what the Palmer there is a great example of. So it really is a single vineyard expression on a given year of one variety only. So it's highly particular.
Absolutely. I'd also say it's another way of describing it, it's more characterful. It's interesting. You can always pick out a lot of nuances within the champagne, but I imagine that a lot of that is because of that. It seems like there's a lot more of a natural development of the wine.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like the energy and the liveliness. It's really refreshing. There is volume on the palate, but it's by no means heavy like many of the Blanc de Noirs tend to be a bit heavy, autumnal. But this is such a delightful, refreshing, linear and driven Blanc de Noir that to me it's a nice, interesting addition to the Champagne's Blanc de Noirs.
And do you know much about their future plans?
Well, I think little by little, they're adding on more vineyards from their, 11 hectares of total vineyards. So I guess the production is growing year by year, but I don't know yet at the moment where they are. Last when I checked, they were using grapes from 2.3 hectares of the vineyards, but this was already a bit more than a year ago. So so probably they've expanded since then. They use a little bit of oak. So less than 15%, I believe, in this wine, which I also like in the making, that it's not obvious there. It's not obviously oaky, but there is just probably this little spiciness that comes from it. I think technically very sound, very, very well made grower champagne in the sort of transparent, very, very modern current style.
I mean, as you say, it's relatively small production. It'll be interesting to see where they take it moving forward. Essi, these have been 3 wonderful champagnes. I really appreciate you putting the time and aside to do this and to arrange the tasting. Just before we wrap up, can you? What are your future plans? What's happening for yourself?
Well, I'm just getting ready to come to England in a couple of weeks' time. We start to taste for the Champagne and Sparkling World Championships. So it's a 2-week intense period of tasting every day, altogether more than 1,000 sparkling wines. So that's something what I look forward to now in the summer. And then currently, other than that, yes, I'm going to start making a new champagne report for the Club Enologic magazine, for example, in August. And then always working on my website. So lots of things on the way.
And also you mentioned it at the start, but what about locally? Because there's champagne is really expanding within your country.
Yeah, I mean, here in Finland, it's an interesting champagne market. We have, we are a small nation, but quite there's a small part of a community which is really interested in champagne. So the events I organize, Grand Champagne. We every time it's a 3-day event where we get 4,000 people around Champagne, taste over 300 champagnes, and have as many as 47 masterclasses by the champagne chef, decavs, and growers. So that's really exciting, and we have more and more people coming from other countries worldwide. Actually, I think this year we had people coming from 20 different countries. So that's all. I will start preparing for the next spring edition after the holidays.
You haven't got much of a rest then, have you, from the judging and then to your own event? But I'm sure that's how you like it.
I will get in some rest, don't worry.
It's great to be so involved with champagne, I'm sure. Essi, thank you. It's been great to connect with you again. Really, thank you so much for sending through these wonderful champagnes, great variety. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guy. It was really good.